Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday morning. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but first we just hit 4,190 subscribers to the channel. Shout out to all the subscribers. And, of course, special tip of the cap goes to the channel members, especially elite channel members, Brandon McKell, Hasher, Salacious Crumb, Rye Guy, Brendan Nelson's Haircut, VGK Tigers, It's Hoof, The Reno, TVO, Austin Roberts, Scott Todd, PH Glass, Aaron Garrett, Arfman, 12th Man, Eli Bennett, Cassio Feria, Samoan, JoJo, and Rep the 206. All right, we have made it to the end, boys, and today we will be looking at the most important player on this team. I don't think there's a single person out there who will dispute that fact. However, to say that he's necessarily the most pivotal player is not guaranteed to be something that everyone agrees on, because this is, like Bobby Wagner before him, this is another player who has earned his stripes in Seattle. He's been here for almost a decade. He's had a great career. He's done amazing things. He's won a Super Bowl. He's already earned his credit in Seattle. And given the fact that he's had so many highly successful and very impressive statistical seasons in a row, some people would say he doesn't really belong here. And under normal circumstances, you would be right. At this point, Russell Wilson having a good statistical season and making the Pro Bowl and competing for an All-Pro spot, those things are a given because he does them every year unless he gets hurt. And even then, he still plays through it and plays at a reasonably high level. But this is not really about Wilson the player. This is about Wilson the cog in the machine that is the Seahawks offense. How is he going to work within a new offense? Because that's what we're bringing in. So that's what this video is about, really. Russell Wilson and his place in this offense. Can he make it work? So, again, I'm going to go take a look at Wilson's stats here, and we're going to come away feeling like, oh, this guy's proven everything he needs to prove. He's made 7 Pro Bowls. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's coming off one of his best seasons ever. But it's not about the box score stats with Wilson anymore. I'll tell you right now, regardless of how things work with the offense next year, Wilson's box score stats are probably going to be very good in 2021 because they're good basically every year, and he's reached that level where he can put up those kinds of stats. So the real question is not so much how well will Wilson play this year, it's how will the way he plays changes. All right, so let's take a look at his numbers so you guys can get an idea of what I mean when I say all this. In 2020, look, there were problems. We all know there were problems. We watched the games, okay? Second half of the year, Wilson did not play well. He had problems, and yet, we are still talking about a guy who nearly completed 69% of his passes, nearly set a personal best in passing yards, 4,212, set a personal best with 40 touchdowns, led the Seahawks to their highest scoring season in franchise history, went 12-4. Now, he did have his most interceptions ever with 13, but you do take the good with the bad to a certain extent. And in terms of the box score stats, I can't say anything bad about Wilson. He had a great season. This video is not me sitting here saying, oh, Wilson had better throw for 50 touchdowns this year and not throw any interceptions, or he's got to get out of here. No. Wilson, in terms of these box score numbers and in terms of general overall performance, I'm sure he's going to be fine. I mean, PFF, even with some of the bad games that he had by the end of the season, look at this, 90.3 PFF grade, and that was with some of the bad games he had later on. But despite this level of success, the struggles at the end of the season led to the firing of Brian Schottenheimer and the hiring of Shane Waldron, who brings in an offensive scheme that is expected to be very, very different. So it's kind of unfortunate that we have to have this transition year with Wilson where I have already gone on record saying I don't think Wilson's going to have his best season ever just because it's a new offense and it is going to take some time for him to learn it. It could take the whole season. Time will tell. But don't be shocked if Wilson has a hard time of it at first. Don't be surprised if Wilson has a hard time of it the whole season. It's a new offense. So, again, I'm not going to be looking for Russell Wilson to be having his best season ever. I want to see the way in which he plays. Because, look, we're doing this at a time when Russell Wilson is the fourth highest paid quarterback in the league by average annual value. You got Mahomes, Prescott, Watson, and then Wilson at $35 million, getting paid more than Rodgers, more than Goff, more than Cousins, more than Wentz, more than Matt Ryan. So this new offense needs to take Wilson to the next level. This has to work. If it works, this team can win Super Bowls over the next few years. If it doesn't work, we're probably blowing it up. So everything rides on this. Now, how should Wilson be playing? What should we see from Wilson this year that is different from the previous years? To answer that question, let's take a look at what Shane Waldron comes from. He comes from the Sean McVay tree. And where does Sean McVay come from? You guys are probably familiar with this picture by now because it's circulated the internet quite a bit in recent times. This is the team photo for the Washington Redskins of the early 2010s. You have Sean McVay here, and you also have Matt LaFleur here and Kyle Shanahan here. You also have Mike McDaniel here. He's still attached at the hip to Kyle Shanahan, but he'll eventually get his own head coaching gig probably. So this is the coaching tree that Shane Waldron sprouted from. You had Mike Shanahan at the top because he was the head coach. So you have the Mike Shanahan tree sprouting the Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay branches, and then you have those branches sprouting their own little seedlings or little twigs. I guess you could say that right now Shane Waldron is a twig. Shane Waldron is a twig off the Sean McVay tree. So it's not about how Wilson plays, because I am supremely confident that even if Wilson doesn't have his best season ever, he's going to play fine. He might, there's some question over whether or not he'll be an MVP candidate or not, but I'm not necessarily looking for that this year because we're going to be transitioning a little bit into a new offense. What I am looking for is the way in which he plays. How does it compare to the way other quarterbacks who are involved in this quote unquote coaching tree play? How does it stack up? So let's take a look at some advanced statistics. And I've shown you guys some of these before. Oh, damn. Damn it, Next Gen. You're messing up my video here. I'm sorry, guys. Next Gen Stats reloaded on me. Okay, so I've already shown you guys time to throw. Okay, so if you take a look at the advanced stats here, time to throw for every quarterback in the league who threw X number of attempts. I think it was over 100 of something. Russell Wilson was 5th in the NFL in 2020. And one of the guys ahead of him was Jalen Hurts, who only played a few games. And then you had guys like Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, who had either elite offensive lines or a unique play style. And then Wilson was right after those guys. And if you take a look at another interesting stat called average intended air yards, and you sort it, you will see that Wilson, of the players who actually threw for a lot of yards last year, is pretty close to the top. His intended air yards on average was 8.6. And of the guys who threw for at least 3,000 yards, he was pretty easily in the top 10. If you pull out guys like Flacco, Jalen Hurts, Drew Lock, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, who didn't get to 3,000, he's easily in the top 10. Now, let's take a look at some of the quarterbacks who are within that tree that I was just talking about, okay? Jared Goff is the prime suspect here, I think, because he's directly under McVay. You have to scroll down towards the middle of the list to find Jared Goff. His time to throw is approximately league average, 2.76 seconds. It's only, zero point 0.2 seconds less than Russell Wilson, but that zero point 0.2 seconds can mean everything. So, yeah, you have Jared Goff down here. You go down a little bit more. Aaron Rodgers, currently part of the Matt LaFleur offense. He was another branch off that Shanahan tree. He gets rid of the ball in about 2.72 seconds on average, right around where Jared Goff is. And then you have Nick Mullins and Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers. They got rid of the ball even faster, 2.63 and 2.57 seconds. Now, look, Russell Wilson is not Jared Goff, thank God. He's not Aaron Rodgers, and he's not Jimmy Garoppolo or Nick Mullins, again, thank God. But I want to see the way in which Wilson plays to move closer to those guys than he was to himself in 2020. So I want to see him get the ball out of his hands in that 2.6, 2.7 second window, maybe 2.8 even. It's a subtle difference that I think is going to be huge for this team in 2021. So I want to see him get rid of the ball faster, like these other pieces of that Shanahan tree have been doing lately. And if you take a look at his intended air yards per, um, again, Wilson is pretty close to the top if you take a look at the quarterbacks that actually played a full season at 8.6. And Aaron Rodgers is down at about 8.1, so not a huge difference, but significant. You've got, let's see here, let's go down all the way to Jared Goff and Nick Mullins. They're near the bottom of the league. Jimmy Garoppolo's there too. These are some of the guys who have near the bottom of the league in terms of intended air yards. And by the way, air yards are how many yards a quarterback throws to the receiver, not including yards after the catch. So it's basically passing yards minus yards after the catch. And again, Russell Wilson is his own guy. He plays differently than these guys, and he should continue to play differently than these guys. But I want to see him play differently, and I want to see him start to incorporate the quicker, shorter passing game from these quarterbacks, because that's what the Shane Waldron offense should really be bringing. And everything is riding on Russell Wilson figuring this out. To look at those three quarterbacks again in more detail, let's take a look at some advanced metrics here as well. If you go down to Russell Wilson's PFR page, in his last three seasons, he is averaging about 9 yards of intended air yards per pass attempt. 9 yards. Last year, 8.6 was actually a low for him. He was actually much higher in 2018 and 2019. And don't get me wrong, he did this to great effect. He was in the MVP race each of these three seasons. I got no problem with him continuing to push the ball down the field, of course, but it seems like it maybe has run its course a little bit. And if you take a look at the way pieces of that Shanahan tree are playing right now, it's very different. Okay, Jared Goff. Again, I don't want Wilson to turn into Jared Goff, but if you take a look at the way Goff has been playing these last couple years, especially, his intended air yards per pass attempt is down to 6.2. 2019, it was down to 7.7, partially because the offensive line has just deteriorated a little bit in its effectiveness and he's had to get the ball out quicker, so he has. Whereas with Wilson, it seemed more like he needs to get the ball out faster, but he's just not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. All we have in this offense are go routes. Aaron Rodgers, let's take a look at what he's been doing under that LaFleur offense. Now, the LaFleur offense is pretty new to Rodgers, so if you take a look, these first 2 years, this was the last year under McCarthy, this was the first year under LaFleur, still about 8.8 yards per of intended air yards per pass attempt. And then in 2020, the offense has a chance to really settle in. Rodgers wins MVP, and his intended air yards per attempt goes down by almost a full yard, 7.9. So you can see Rodgers just getting the ball out of his hands just a little bit faster, throwing more short passes. Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a good quarterback. I don't want Wilson to turn into Jimmy Garoppolo, but look at what he did these last 2 years in San Francisco. He only played 6 games last year, but intended air yards per pass attempt is down at 6.5, 6.3. Tiny sample size in 2018. You can't really take too much from that. He didn't even throw 100 passes. Not that he had a huge sample size in 2020, but that's how these guys play. And I'm not saying that Wilson has to play just like them. I'm not saying that Wilson suddenly needs to turn into a guy who turns in who throws for 7 intended air yards per attempt. But I want to see him start to do things the way that these quarterbacks do things partially. I want to see him start to reduce his time to throw. I want to see him start to reduce his intended air yards. And I want to see where that leaves us at the end of the season because at the end of the day, when you bring in Shane Waldron, these are the things that your quarterback should be doing because you didn't bring him in just to keep doing the same things you were doing before. So, in order for this to work, Wilson needs to change the way he plays a little bit from the last couple few seasons. And I'm not saying this year has to be perfect, but I want to see that change. And if we see that change, and by 2022 he's playing at an MVP level again, we have a chance to win Super Bowls. But if it doesn't go that way, then look, Wilson might get traded. Carroll might retire because he doesn't want to go through another rebuild. You're going to see a lot of the veterans on this team go without a chance to really win anything great for us. You're going to see some of the young guys decide they don't want to come back, like DK Metcalf or maybe even Jamal Adams if he doesn't sign his extension soon. It's going to be bad, and it could be decades before we get another contender in Seattle again. So everything really rides on this working out. And even if the immediate results aren't great, what I really need to see is the attempt at changing the way Wilson plays. The end result may not be MVP level, but we need to see that. We need to see him get the ball out of his hands faster and throw more shorter passes and trust the system to produce big results. It can't just be, I'm throwing it 50 yards down the field to DK Metcalf with a dude on his back hip. It's got to be something else. And obviously, Waldron has a big part in whether or not this works out. But on the field, the player who will best represent whether or not it's working out is Russell Wilson. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you expect from Wilson this year? What do you think the new offense is going to look like? Just let me know what you think about all this. But Russell Wilson is the most important player on this team. And I don't think there's any doubt that once you really break it down in this way, he is clearly the most pivotal player on this team. Because if he works well in this new offense, this team will compete for titles. And if he cannot fit into this new offense, blow her up. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks.